Good morning. I'd like to call the Mendocino County LAFCO meeting of October 7th, 2024 to order and invite roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Gonzalez,
Present.
Commissioner McGordy,
Here.
Commissioner Horsley, Commissioner Roden,
Here.
Commissioner Kristen,
Here.
Commissioner Crane, Commissioner Hashik, and Chair Mulhern.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. We are now on item 2 of our agenda, public expression. The Commission welcomes participation in the LAFCO meeting. Any person may address the Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO, which is not on the agenda. There's a 3-minute limit and no action will be taken at this meeting. If you are in the room in Ukiah and wish to come forward on public expression, please do so at this time. If you are on Zoom and wish to speak on public expression, you can use the raise hand feature or press *9 on your phone. I'm not seeing any hands raised on Zoom, so I'm going to move on to item number 3. We have no other business, and we are now on item number 4, the consent calendar. The consent calendar is items 4A and 4B, September 9th, 2024 regular meeting summary, and the September claims and financial reports. I'll be looking for commissioner questions or comments on these 2 items, or a motion for approval.
Motion for approval. I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any questions from commissioners? Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on the consent calendar? Seeing no one come forward in the room and no hands raised online, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Kristen, Commissioner Roden. Yes. Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5A, public hearing, the Caspar South Water District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update. I'm not sure who's going to start this one off, Uma, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. I wanted to note that we do have 2 members of the district on with us. We have Dan Keene and Steve McCormick, and our analyst, Jen Crump, will be presenting this item.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. This is the public hearing for the Caspar South Water District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update. We did have a public workshop on this item in September. This is the time for consideration of the document for formal adoption. Next slide, please. The Caspar South Water District was formed on December 19, 1978. The district boundary is the same as the Caspar South residential subdivision boundary, which includes a total of 107 parcels. There are approximately 62 to 185 customers served by the district, depending on the season. And it is a single service provider, providing wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services. Next slide, please. This public hearing is to consider the public testimony and proposed adoption of the Caspar South Water District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update. The item starts on page 15 of your agenda packet. There's also a list of revisions made since the September workshop that are in the staff report on page 15. I'd also like to note a correction on pages 28, 49, and 54. The correct number is 67 and not 68. The MSR determinations are on page 55, and the sphere of influence determinations are on page 59. Next slide, please. The proposed sphere of influence for the Caspar South Water District is to affirm the coterminous sphere, which means it is the same as the jurisdictional boundary. Finding there are adequate wastewater services for the current service area. The district does not have any outside agency areas that have been identified for services within the planning horizon of this document. Next slide, please. There was a 21-day public hearing notice that was properly published, posted, and distributed on September 12th. Proof of publications are in your agenda packet on page 101. We have received no public comments to date. And the municipal service review and sphere of influence update are exempt from further review under CEQA. And the notice of exemption is included on page 103 of your agenda packet. Next slide, please. The recommendations today are to find the Caspar South Water District Municipal Service Review categorically exempt from CEQA, and find that the sphere of influence update is exempt from CEQA pursuant to 15061B3, and approve the notice of exemption for filing. And adopt resolution number 2024-2503, approving the Caspar South Water District Municipal Service Review and sphere of influence update. Next slide, please. I also see that we have Steve McCormick and Dan Keene on the line with the Caspar South Water District, and we'd like to thank and acknowledge them for their time and assistance with developing the municipal service review and sphere of influence study. This concludes our presentation, and we also want to thank Mark Waserman as well. This concludes our presentation, and staff is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? I'm not seeing any. Commissioner Christian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was looking for page 15 where there were revisions, but that 15 in the main document? Separate page?
That's PDF page 15 of your agenda packet.
I mean, I was just curious.
It's the staff report. They're listed in the staff
Oh,
report.
it's called staff report?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional. Commissioner Roden.
So I'm just curious about how the system works. So all the effluent from this district goes into it, winds up in a giant leach field. And I'm just curious if the county monitors that for environmental issues, or the state, is that what the state's role? That's my question.
Jen, would you like to respond?
Yes, yeah, thank you for your question. Let me refer back to actually EO Hinman. Do you have anything to add in response?
Sure. Yeah, they do operate under a permit with the state, and I don't believe the Environmental Health Department is involved, but perhaps we could ask one of the board members. They have state permit requirements for the reporting component of that, and we have some description of that in the services section.
Commissioner McGordy.
So most of these systems operate under the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and they have to monitor and submit reports. And I don't believe the county really is involved with any monitoring on it.
Yeah, I would refer to page 54 of your agenda packet for the latest, for the description of the State Water Resources Control Board permit and the violations that were noted on their system from 22 and 23. And to clarify, those violations were mostly for delayed reporting.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional commissioner questions, so I'd like to open it up for the public, and if there's any public in the room that wishes to come forward, you may do so at this time, or if you are on the Zoom and wish to speak, you can use the raise hand feature or press *9 on your phone. I'm not seeing anyone come forward in the room, and I'm not seeing any hands raised online, so I'd bring it back to the board for a motion of the recommended action. There are actually two recommended actions. Commissioner McGordy?
Yeah, I move the recommended actions, unless they have to be considered separately, in which case I move the first recommended action.
They can be taken together.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Kristen?
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner McGoity,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you. And thank you to Analyst Crump and the team for working on this and bringing it forward. It's really nice to be able to get these checked off of our list. We do not have a workshop today, so we're on to item number 7A, appointment of alternate public member. The commission will review and consider the application of Ragda Zakaria for the alternate public member seat for the remainder of the 24-27 term. E.L. Hinman, did you want to start this one off?
Yes, thank you. The alternate public seat has been vacant since the end of Commissioner Winkle's term in December 2023. Notices of the vacancy were first advertised in October of last year and have been extended in 60-day increments since then. Alternate public members serve 4-year terms and are appointed by the commission. Public members must be residents of Mendocino County and may not be a current board member for or employee of the county, any city or special district within the county. In mid-September, we received an application from Ragda Zakaria, who is in attendance today, to introduce herself and her interest in LAFCO. Her application and resume were included as an attachment in the staff report starting on page 107.
8 years. And then I moved here. I lived in Dallas for at least 10 years. My background is I hold a bachelor degree in business. I've always been engaged in local government issues. And I personally watched Rohnert Park growth, Santa Rosa. And I've always been intrigued by the steps, how who controls these events? Because, for instance, like Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, they overextended themselves. And when I moved to Willits, because I like small, charming towns, I attended the meetings, supervisors' meetings, for almost 2 years on and off. I missed a few ones. And I'm very intrigued when I became aware of your group control or input, whether it's in giving suggestions or, like you said on your web, you are the watchdog of making sure things happen the right way. I feel like, being a newcomer, I've studied the issues and I learned about the issues in Willits and all the other Mendocinos. I think I can bring, I know I don't have the right to vote, but I think I can bring an insight, another way to look on the inside coming from other counties. And I've seen how growth can be impacted in a negative or positive way. So I appreciate your consideration, and if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer them.
Thank you for that. Are there any commissioner questions? Commissioner McGourty and then Commissioner Roden.
So what things do you think would be the right way to grow for a town like Willits? What would you like to see?
That's why I decided to join your group, because you have a lot of good ideas, and I think you are the controlling factor. I have a lot of ideas for Willits. But, I'm kind of like sitting on the line. But I just feel like joining your group, getting to know your thinking and what you can implement or in a positive or negative way. I just feel like you have a control, and I just feel like you can put a stop of something that's going to be bad for the growth. I mean, growth is very important, but I've seen what happened in Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park. I mean, Rohnert Park was a small town, nothing on the north, south, west. So I just like the town. There's a lot of needs of growth, absolutely, but it needs to be controlled growth.
So what features would you recommend? Just if there's going to be a plan for growth in Willits,
I know.
What things would you recommend that they consider?
Well, in the last meeting, or the last before that, they did submit the plan of the growth of possibly annexing like 5 large areas. My personal opinion, like the city mentioned, like, I think they're chewing more than they can handle. I think you need to start in a smaller area. You need to do better study, especially the water, the roads, how you're going. I mean, growth is good. You are going to have these huge developers coming in, put housing, but does the city actually can provide the proper services if all these 5 districts were annexed or built? So I think we're chewing more than we can handle personally.
Okay, so your concern is about infrastructure, among other things.
And water,
Mhm.
and water. Because, well, it's a small town, and, we have a certain budget. You cannot just jump all of a sudden, and we don't even know how many houses are going to be put on these lands. And there is a lot of, most of the public in the public hearing, they weren't really supported for that. I think you can start with one, not just the five of them, and see what happens, especially the parcel of Highway 20. And there is more important things Willett City can have better control on in budgeting and taking care of local infrastructure. I mean, we're talking about the side pavement, we're talking about streets, we're talking about the sewer, electricity, and water. It's a small town, so you cannot just jump everything and just say, okay, we'll give it a try and we'll see what happens. I mean, once these large developers comes in, like they did in Rohnert Park and Santa Rosa, they swallow the town. They do. I've seen it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roden and then Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thanks. Well, I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your interest in LAFCO. I also think that these are fascinating issues, and so you've come to the right place.
I hope so.
And I wanted to suggest, if you haven't already read, there's some publications from the California, do you know what I'm talking about? There's some publications that, like a citizen's guide to LAFCOs and some other sort of basic, information about LAFCOs, because we're constrained in some ways about the decisions.
Oh, absolutely, like any other government organization, but you do have a huge influence.
Yeah, we do.
And I like the idea that you're the guard dog, and like you have the right to jump in and say, no, that can't happen. But there is also sometimes, the bureaucracy, and by the time you get to it, it's a little bit too late. So I like to bring the issues on the table way ahead of the approval. I did study the website. I did listen to the 2 interview with the Terma and the concerns. And I know it's a learning process.
Yeah,
Learning process, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's why I thought, if I joined this influential group that has so much influence on the growth of the area, that would be the place where I can give an insight of where I was and what happened and so on. I'm just citizenship. That's all.
this is why, we invite, there's a space for public involvement, and that's exactly.
And my background, I've always been in sales, in hotels expansions, and I'm a real estate agent, and that's why I know the impact of building too many houses. It's like, okay, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa are already suffering of the traffic and lack of water and so on. So there is a 2 sides of every issue, and I think I just feel like it's good to be involved in a group that has the final word of suggestion, yes or no, while waiting for the smaller group to come up with the idea and so on. Sometimes it's better to put a stop on a project from the beginning.
Yeah, and
Why waste it,
these, we just approved a municipal service review for Caspar.
Yes,
and,
I had that.
And so these are, supposed to be relatively current.
Yes.
And to guide us in making a decision about whether a city can really take on more development, do they have capacity in their water system or wastewater system? So anyway, it is a really interesting commission, and I'm really happy that you're interested in joining.
Thank you. It's a learning process for me. Wherever I moved, I like to get involved in the local community. Volunteer in certain I attend the meetings. And it's Mr. Gonzalez, he brought it to the table last meeting, and he said, oh, LAFCO is looking for somebody to volunteer from the public, remember? So that kind of, it's like, so I went home and I just looked it up, because I was confused because your organization, another organization. So I'd like to join a group that has the final say, yes or no. I don't believe in repeating the steps. It's a learning process. If it didn't work, just let it go.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yeah, and again, I'm glad you took up and decided to look into LAFCO. I think what Mari was talking about, they call it LAFCO 101.
Yes.
And it's basically, you kind of learn what the role of LAFCO is. And it's not to derail growth as much as to basically come in and make sure that the growth is well thought of and that there is capacity for what they're going to do. So if that's the intent to help guide, then I perfectly welcome you on board.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir.
And so, but again, there is a learning curve. And
course.
quick question, did you read the agenda today?
Yes, I
Okay.
printed it, and I have
Yeah.
my circles around it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming today. And I also just would like to reiterate that, you know, our job isn't just being a yes or a no. Our job is really to consider whether or not the services are able to facilitate growth, whether that's in the best interest of the public, despite what our own personal opinions or experience might be. So hopefully you're able to keep a very open mind as you consider items that might come before LAFCO, because it's very important. We receive an incredible amount of information. Our packets are hundreds of pages long each meeting, and it's very important to study and consider all of the information that we're provided before we make a decision.
Absolutely.
Okay, so.
And I know you do a lot of studies and research, and I've seen some familiar faces come to the city council in Willits. And I know you cover more territory than just Willits. I was just answering the question from Commissioner. He asked me specifically about Willits.
Thank you. So, are there any members of the public that wish to comment? Seeing none in the room and seeing no hands raised online, no, that's just the cursor. That's okay. So I would just be looking,
Yeah, I move that we,
the recommended action is just appointment.
okay, I was wondering what the specific wording but I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. But anyway, the recommended action.
Second.
What is
The recommended action is to appoint
Appoint,
Ragda
that's the verb I
Zakaria
couldn't
for
think of.
the remainder of
yeah.
the 24-27 term, and we have a motion and a second. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kristen,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
and Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Thank you, unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I look forward to learning from all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will move on to agenda item 7B, the commissioner terms, recruitments, and appointments. And EO Hinman, I think you're just updating us on the status of the commissioner's current terms and vacancies?
Yes, that's correct. And I want to apologize for the distraction of moving around. We were having some audio problems. So each year around this time, we provide an informational report to the commission on the status of the commissioner terms and any upcoming vacancies. This item does start on page 111 of your agenda packet. Although commissioner terms are 4 years, there are a number of other factors that affect terms, including board or council rotations and selection committee decisions. The staff report describes how each category is appointed or elected. A number of commissioners, board, and council terms end at the end of this year. Commissioner McGordy and alternate Commissioner Kristen will not be running for re-election, and their term will therefore end in December of this year. Board terms for Commissioner Gonzalez and alternate Commissioner Crane are up at the end of this year. Both are running for re-election, so we'll know towards after November. The executive officer runs the special district nomination and election process on behalf of the special district selection committee, which we initiated in July for the current regular seat vacancy, as well as the anticipated alternate special district seat for Commissioner Kristen. We received one nomination for each seat by the deadline, and in accordance with the CKH, when only one nomination for a seat is received, that a nominee is automatically appointed without election. Both appointees are from the Brook Trails Township CSD. Sarah Mahoney is appointed the regular member for the 2025 to 2028 term, and Joanne Cavallari is appointed the alternate member for the remainder of Commissioner Kristen's term, which ends in December of 2026. Terms for both appointees will begin in January, and they will be sworn in at that time. And I wanted to note that Joanne Cavallari is in the audience today. Thank you for coming. This is an informational report, so no action is required. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do commissioners have any questions? Okay, we're not seeing any. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment or have questions? Seeing no one come forward in the room and having no hands raised online, since this is just an informational report, we can move on to item 8A, the report on applications and workload. EO Hinman.
Thank you. By way of an update, there's been very little movement on most of the applications. However, we have issued a certificate of filing for the City of Ukiah's application for annexation of the Western Hills property. So a certificate of filing indicates a complete application. We have all the components we need to proceed, and then we have scheduled the proposal for hearing on November 4th. The work plan is progressing. For the current fiscal year work plan, we're continuing to develop administrative draft studies for the Russian River Flood Control District and the Potter Valley Irrigation District, and we will be meeting with Laytonville and Round Valley County Water Districts in the coming months. We have 3 remaining studies to finish up for the coastal water districts, and we are waiting for responses for information requests from the Elk County Water District, and we're also working with the Irish Beach Water District and Westport County Water District on the administrative draft studies. That's the end of my presentation if there are questions.
Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any. So item 8B is correspondence. Has any correspondence been received?
No correspondence.
Do we have an CALASFCO business and legislative report update for item 8C?
Just briefly, SB 1209, which was the LAFCO indemnification legislation, was signed by the governor on September 28th. So LAFCO, as of January 1st, will be authorized to require indemnifications. We'll need to update our policies and procedures regarding the indemnification clauses, and we'll be working with our legal counsel to develop that indemnification clause. As far as a CALASFCO legislative committee, there was a lot of activity with a special, that kind of ended with a special meeting of the CALASFCO board regarding the legislative committee. They had adopted a policy which many EOs felt had insufficient outreach to the individual LAFCOs. It was based on their CALASFCO strategic plan to modernize their legislative policies. However, they had essentially disbanded the legislative committee. They received a request for a special meeting and a letter signed by over 50% of the LAFCOs requesting that the legislative committee be reinstated. The board did rescind their action and reinstated the legislative committee policy and the structure. They will be considering the issue again next year. I think that's all I have other than the CALASFCO conference starts on the 16th, and that will be in Yosemite. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Do you have any additional reports for the verbal report in addition to your written report?
I do not. I believe.
Oh.
I was going to ask a
Pardon
question
me.
about the legislative.
Yes.
So somebody asked me, I guess a legislative committee, lobbyists to do work, to their behalf, and wondering if the facts would be obvious. Not like there's a lot of intrigue here that's going on. I attended about half of that legislative committee. I don't really understand what the issues here are here, but I guess they advocate for LAFCO positions with.
That's correct. So when they rescinded the legislative committee initially, they also initiated a contract, established a contract with an advocacy group. And there was concern with that as well, because I believe that contractor that they are using also provides other services, of course, to various different groups, and including individual LAFCOs. So there was concern amongst the LAFCOs that that was not done with enough transparency, and they were concerned with that contract in particular. I believe that CALASFCO is maintaining that contract with the advocacy group at this time, and they'll be revisiting that later. I don't, I'm sorry, but I
That's
can.
all right. I'll ask at the LAFCO meeting.
I'm
Thank
sure it
you.
will. I'm sure it will be a topic.
There's a lot of energy in that meeting.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
was.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Uma, was that, I guess, the legislative, I guess the request to get rid of that, was it the larger LAFCOs looking to do that, or was it kind of a combination? Do you know?
There were, it was throughout the state. So it was each regional executive officer representative reached out to their member LAFCOs, and so it was signed by everyone from Southern California way up north.
Oh, no, I the revolt was basically, but my question was the request to terminate the legislative committee. Did that come from the larger LAFCOs, or did it come from?
No, that was part of the concern, was that came from the CALASFCO board themselves, who were implementing their strategic plan. And I believe the concern was that there was not outreach done to the individual LAFCOs in making that decision. And when they first did the strategic plan, there was not a lot of LAFCO involvement in that process. So there was just kind of that break in communication.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any additional commissioner questions. Are there any committee reports? Seeing none, I'd move on to item 8F and just ask if there are any commissioners that wish to report or have comments or questions about any items. Commissioner McGordy.
So I see on your schedule of MSR reviews, the small water districts, but now that they're forming a JPA, including Willow, that's the latest development. So basically, pretty much all of the water companies in Ukiah, with the exception of Regina, will be part of the city of Ukiah's. I really shouldn't say it that way. There will be a JPA that involves all of these separate companies. Will you still continue with the MSRs, or is that going to change everything?
Until there's actually a consolidation of those agencies, they remain independent special districts. So we will continue on with preparing MSRs. We have been in touch with representatives of the Ukiah Valley Water Authority for the past year. And they are in support of us continuing on with the MSRs at this time. And there's hope that it will facilitate or at least provide some of the background that is necessary for discussion and preparation of that consolidation effort.
Have they given you a timeline of when they expect to finish the consolidation? Because I know they're working hard on it to keep it moving.
I have not received an update lately. I am scheduled to talk with Sean White in the coming weeks, though, and we'll get an update. And we had tentatively planned to start those MSRs and sphere updates in January, so which is coming up fast.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner Roden?
Maybe a little bit about that. There's a consultant who's now assessing the infrastructure in the Ukiah Valley of all the different districts, and the findings from that consultant will inform how in a physical way, the consolidation could happen in terms of pipes and things like that. So there's this groundwork that needs to be done first, and that's all I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, that checks with what I understand. So they have to do kind of a pre-engineering in order to apply for grants from the Department of Water Resources Drinking Water Division. So I believe that's the pathway that they're on, is to get all of that. So it's essentially shovel ready.
Yeah, and we're already getting, well, the authority is already getting funds from SAFER to carry this process forward.
Thank you. Well, with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, November 4th at 9 a.m. here in the County Board of Supervisors chambers. Thank you, everybody.